What is going on, everybody? Welcome to a CFP bracket release edition of your opening drive. As always, I am Jeremy the Couch Potato. Opposite side of the screen, we got Coach Slate, and we are here courtesy of the Barn Baseball and Softball Academy Cornerstone Home Remodeling. What's good, sir?
Oh, not much, man. We were talking a little bit before we got on here. Full-fledged gymnastics dad. Uh, we took the oldest, Willa. We traveled to Worcester, Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah, we traveled to Worcester, and she had her first real live gymnastics competition, and she crushed it, man. Like she did great. She got first place on the beam, which was that was a big one. She got first place in the floor, and then she got second in vault. But all that's well and good. The one thing I want to brag about my daughter on, she fell off the bars today.
Ooh.
Yeah, so she fell off the bars. It's something that she had been struggling with in practice, and it hurt her feelings because she's a competitor. Like she's looking at scores, like, "Hey, I'm going to win. I need to win. I need to do this. I needed to score this." And there were a couple tears. There were a few tears. You could tell her spirits were broken, but that girl took some tough coaching from her gymnastics coach, looked her dead in the eyes, "Yes, ma'am," and went out on the beam and took first place. And so that was like, I'm about to get emotional talking about it. That, like we always talk about in football, next play mentality.
Yep.
The fact that I saw that from my 7-year-old, like I could die a happy man. Like just knowing that my kid was able to overcome some adversity. So man, yeah, man, that was fun. I hear you got some ruckus going on in your house.
Yeah. The boy got home about midnight last night, and OG Fortnite's back, so it's like junior high and high school years around here. The yelling and screaming, and the days of him and Brady Wink until 2 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, you were in Worcester. That's where the Jaden's missus, we'll call
Yeah,
her,
yeah,
resides. She actually should be walking in the door anytime now. Cool little town, though.
yeah. It
Um,
is. It is.
Unfortunately, Wayne County, home of Hillsdale, who got drubbed, uh,
Yes,
on Friday in the
yes, they did.
D7 game. Before we get to some we're going to try to talk some high school football playoffs because it was state championship weekend. Um, the day we've all been kind of waiting for, the CFP bracket, the final release today. Um, we didn't get as much chaos as we could have yesterday in the conference title games. We got a little bit with SMU getting beat by Clemson on a last second 54-yard field goal by a freshman kicker. Ohio teams, be it the Browns or the Buckeyes, can't find kickers that are that consistent.
Yeah.
But Dabo did, just good old Dabo. So that was obviously the big question mark going into this is SMU going to get punished for losing a conference championship game versus Bama, 9-3, really good wins, but some really bad losses.
Yeah.
And I would love to tell you that I think the committee nailed the actual rankings side of it, but I don't think they did. I do think they got the teams right.
I
I
agree
think
with that.
I think the teams that are there, for those of you that are listening and that follow me on X, I kind of took the defense of SMU today because the big defense, talks about how SMU doesn't have a top 25 win. You know who else doesn't have a top 25 win?
Hook
The
'em.
number 3 team in the rankings. Hook 'em. So if that's your defense to SMU being out, then Texas needs to be under that same microscope.
Yeah.
Thoughts on the SMU Bama debate before we
Yeah,
dive
man.
into the rankings.
And so I was watching I forget his name, but he's on CBS. Gosh, his name's escaping me, but he was talking about how the CFP, the playoff bracket, isn't about the best teams; it's about the best brands, right? And so, I think there's some merit to that. I think if you look back at the BCS, like you knew if Ohio State won 10 or 11 games, they were going to be in a BCS bowl no matter what, just because of the way we travel and eyes are going to be on the TV, and same thing with Bama and Notre Dame and things like that. But I was hoping that would not be the case. I don't think you set a good precedent when you allow a team who has 3 losses in. Now, if there were multiple teams with 3 losses, Bama definitely deserves to be in, no doubt about it. I think Bama is one of the best 12 teams. But if you're talking about a complete body of work, I don't think teams should be punished for losing in conference championship games. I think you're going to see the conference championship games go away in some form or fashion. I think you're going to see the way it is, like even in high school. The teams with the best records, and if there's a tie, then there's a multiple team conference champ, because you're going to have those conversations. Like should Penn State be punished for losing to Oregon in a good football game? Right? Should Penn State fall behind Ohio State? Like those are things that I think you cannot punish a team for making it to the conference championship and losing. I think you can reward the team that goes out there and wins, like Clemson, right? But I thought SMU deserved to be in. I really did. And I was very happy to see with the committee that they stuck to their guns and they didn't allow dollar signs to change their mind on that. And so that was big. They could have put Alabama in, and then you would have Ohio State, Tennessee, Texas, Penn State, Alabama, Notre Dame, Georgia, like all these huge fan bases where you're going to make a crap ton of money off of. But they went with the Pony Express down in Dallas, Texas. And so I think I think that was good, man. I was very happy to see them get in.
Yeah, and you would have actually had Alabama going to Penn State.
Yeah.
And you hit on something else, the Ohio State-Penn State debate. Yes, Ohio State beat Penn State head-to-head. Penn State, again, doesn't have great wins. But in a way, if you push Penn State below Ohio State, you are punishing them for the conference title game loss.
Yep.
So, as a Buckeye fan, I would have loved to have not been in the half of the bracket that Ohio State's in.
Absolutely.
But take care of your business against the team up north, and then you're probably drawing that 5 or 6 spot.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about that. I think the committee recognized that, and I think Ohio State deserved to be. I don't like to use the word punish, but their ranking should follow suit. Right? You lost a game that you should not have lost. Granted, it's a rivalry game and those things happen, but you lost to a team that ended up 7-5. Okay, you can't have that. Penn State's 2 losses are to us and to the number 1 team in the country, and so I think they got that right with keeping them above us. I understand the argument, and I saw a lot of Buckeye, podcasts and Twitter feeds and things like that were saying that there is no way, Penn State should be ahead. And I get that logic, but I think the committee, I think they got it right. And I think it's setting a pretty decent precedent for what this is going to look like moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're there. It needs to be tinkered.
Yeah.
And as we get through, as we dive into the rankings and the bracket here in a second, you're going to see some of the things that need to be changed. And I think that is the automatic buys. This is not a knock on Arizona State because those dudes are playing as good or better than anybody in the country right now.
Yep.
Boise State, their losses to Oregon, 3 points, and Oregon had 2 kick returns for touchdowns in that game.
Yeah.
And Ashton Genty, straight up dog.
But
do I think Boise can hang with a lot of the teams they're going to see? No, I don't. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. But that's why we play the games.
Yep.
We saw it. Kellen Moore and the running back, Ian.
Gosh, I know you're talking about
Statue of Liberty against Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it. So do I think there's going to be a team make a run that none of us expect to? Absolutely. Because that's what conference championship weekend showed us.
Yeah.
I thought for sure Penn State was going to get absolutely boat raced
Yeah.
after 10 minutes of that game, and lo and behold, if Drew Ayler doesn't Drew Ayler, they've got a chance.
Yeah.
Oregon is very. I hope to hell that Ryan Day and Jim Knowles and Chip Kelly are watching that. Now, yes, you have to get by Tennessee, but Penn State was aggressive. They blitzed. They ran the ball. Penn State's really good, but the defense was the thing. There wasn't any in that game, but
No.
they played enough to keep it slow. Georgia. Everybody's all about Georgia right now. You can throw the ball all over Georgia.
Yeah.
If you can hold up for that long, you will be able to throw the ball against Georgia.
Yeah. Well,
so
one of the things that stood out to me, I didn't mean to cut you off.
you're good.
It was something that as soon as I saw it happening, I started jotting down a bunch of notes. But the way that Oregon was playing was the way that I think Ohio State should be trying to play. Let's get out on these dudes quick. Let's be fast. Let's be up tempo. Let's go score 14. Our defense is going to go out and get a few stops, make teams play catch up, right? And I think because of, and this is one of the things we'll talk about later with Coach Day, I think he got in his head as far as like, I've got to be able to control these games with the running game. I've got these two Ferraris in my backfield that I've got to be able to use them and run the ball, that he lost sight of who he is, right? He let Chip Kelly, completely take reins to the offense without Coach Day having his imprint on the offense as well. And so I think you're going to see a drastic change when it comes to that, i.e. what we saw 2 years ago when we went up against, or 3 years ago when we went up against Georgia, right? If we had a defense that would resemble anything that we have right now, we win that game, and everybody's talking about it's one of the biggest wins in Ryan Day's career.
Yep.
You look at the way the offense played; they were aggressive, and so I think that showed that this is the way that we should play, right? I think you're going to see more 10 personnel stuff from us. The other thing I like too when I was watching that game is Penn State was able to just run the ball. And it's because Drew Aller was able to hit some things down the field, attack the middle of the field, and do different things like that really loosened them up. And it really exposed some weaknesses to Oregon's, defense in their armor. And so I don't think there's a dominant team in college football.
No.
I really don't. I look at these 12 teams, and I think any one of them could go on a run, like you said, and win a natty. I really do. And so that's what it's so interesting to see, the dynamics of the different 12 teams. That's why I'm so pumped up for a 12-team playoff. I think they're finally like figuring out like this is the way it should have always been.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to kind of take a detour, talking about Penn State's defense, for anybody who questions if a Jim Knowles defense is the right thing for Ohio State, because I can tell you the answer is never. This is a rhetorical question. Ohio State has never had a dude in the mold of an Abdul Carter or a Micah Parsons or those types of guys. And a Knowles defense, that becomes the standard. You talk about, you've talked about Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks, both being just freak athletes, multiple times. Those guys are the closest thing on this roster to an Abdul Carter.
Yeah.
And Abdul Carter lines up all over the field. You saw last night, there were times he was playing Mike. There was times he had his hand on the ground. There was times he would be almost a jack in a way. So that's something to monitor, as Ohio State moves forward, to see if you start to finally acquire those kinds of dudes. There's some scuttlebutt out there that this might be a curtain call for Larry Johnson. That's possible, but again, we'll see what happens there. So back on the highway though. So the rankings, obviously before we get into the teams that made it, if they were going just a straight top 12, first team out would have been Miami. Oh darn shucks.
Yeah.
And then you get into Ole Miss and South Carolina, who I honestly feel like both should be ahead of Miami. Then you get to Clemson, who's in. And then, you get into the BYUs, Iowa, Illinois, or Iowa State, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the bracket itself, one half of this bracket is very much unbalanced to the other. I don't think there's any other way to put it.
Yeah.
Your number one seed obviously is the Oregon Ducks. They are the only undefeated team, and then that makes the most sense. So they get a first round bye to the Rose Bowl. Georgia as the number 2 makes sense. Boise gets the 3 seed, and they are the 9th overall team. So they would still have been in as it sat.
Yeah.
So, and then Arizona State is the 12, but got the 4 seed. They are playing as good as anybody. Cam Scadaboo is
Yeah.
a dude.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. He's a throwback.
yeah. There's no other way to put that one.
Yeah.
So your number 1 seed Oregon will get the winner of the Saturday night primetime game, not at noon, in Columbus, Ohio, as Old Rocky Top and the Tennessee Vols come to the shoe.
Yeah.
Obviously, we will dive way deeper into this when we do our Before the Battle.
Yeah.
2 very, very, I feel like evenly matched teams, but there are things that each team can do to exploit the other.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. I think Josh Heupel I think he's a good coach. He's a little different. He does some things differently. But I think college football is better when those blue bloods are at the top. And so like I love seeing that Tennessee is finally back to being what Tennessee was when we were growing up, right?
Yep.
Had a lot of respect for that program and the coaches that they had come through there. Like it was fun to watch. There's something about these big brands getting up against each other, right? That makes you feel a little nostalgia. I believe the last time Ohio State and Tennessee played, Peyton Manning was the quarterback. Eddie George was on the team. I think it was a pretty close game. I
It was
can't
like
remember off
20
the
to
top of my head.
14, I think.
Yeah. And so you think back to that last time, you got all these Hall of Famers on the field,
Yes.
right? And so I just think it's a really good matchup. And like you said, we'll dive into a lot of that stuff. And before the battle, we'll show some clips of Tennessee. They're good in all phases of the game, man. They are really good. I think the Buckeyes are really good as well. We had one bad game. We can't lose sight of that. It was just one bad game at the worst time. But I think it's definitely an evenly matched game, and I think the Buckeyes have enough to win this one and try to make that run that we want them to make.
Just for reference, the high temperature in Columbus, Ohio that day is projected to be 38 degrees and the low of 24. So, that's what we all keep clamoring to see. What is that going to look like? And so then let's see. Then that would take us on that side of the bracket to the Saturday at 4:00. Number 5 seed Texas, number 12 Clemson, with the winner of that playing Arizona State. 2 teams that looked a little clunky yesterday, but again, two massive brands.
Sorry, my daughter's losing her mind right now.
Is she playing Fortnite?
No, she's not playing Fortnite, but something's going on in there. Oh man, gosh,
I love
but
it.
yeah. So the Texas and Clemson. Listen, I'm going to be real. I hope Texas just destroys them. I am not a Clemson fan. I'm sorry, Coach Sweeney. I believe that he's a really good coach. He's done a lot of things. Been to the CFP like 7 times. Won a natty. He's done some great things, right? But I'm just not a fan. I'm just not a fan. And I think
he gives
Sark,
me major Pentecostal preacher vibes.
yeah, yeah. And I think Sark's done a really good job at Texas. I think you could argue that maybe if Arch Manning is a quarterback, that they are undefeated. I think Quinn is a really talented quarterback, but like we saw in the Browns game today, he throws some up, man, and it's guaranteed interception. And so I think it's a good matchup. I know Clemson's going to come ready to play. They're well coached. Offensive coordinator's good. Klubnik can do a lot of things, but I'm excited to see Texas, take that game. So that'll be a good one though.
Yeah, and then so obviously that side of the bracket is really tough. You are the number 1 seed in Oregon, and you are going to have to play either Tennessee or Ohio State, and then potentially Texas. Like, that's not the way this is supposed to work.
Yeah.
So then you get to the other side. Number 2, Georgia, will play the winner of the Friday night primetime interstate game, where I fully imagine that Bruner's Pub at MVP Lanes in Fort Wayne is going to be popping that
Yeah,
night
it's gonna be
as
rocking.
Indiana travels to South Bend to play Notre Dame.
How cool is that, man? To have a interstate game like
Yeah.
that's pretty cool, man. Um, that's going to be a good one. I think this is a game where Marcus Freeman can really prove himself. I think Indiana has already overachieved for the season. You know, obviously
Oh
Signetti has
yeah.
gotten that big contract. The fact that they're in the playoff, I know nobody expected that at the beginning of the season. And he's getting some. He's already hitting the recruiting trail in the portal. So he's trying to re-up again for next year. But I think this will be a good opportunity for Marcus Freeman to really put a stamp on his short tenure so far at Notre Dame. He's able to go out and win one of these playoff games. And I think Notre Dame is a team that they're gritty, man. They
Yeah.
find a way to win some ugly games with Riley Leonard. They like to run the ball. The offensive line is solid. Their defense has always been good under Freeman. So I think if they win, they could give Georgia some major issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the Boise State Broncos will be playing the winner of the noon game on Saturday. SMU ventures to Happy Valley. If Penn State does not walk to the Final Four, James Franklin should be fired.
Yeah, yeah. I try to defend coaches. You know that good, bad, or
Right.
indifferent. I
For
try to.
sure.
I've always tried to be on the side of the player first and foremost, and I always try to make sure like I'm standing up for coaches when they win 10, 11, 12 games that they shouldn't be fired. Um, but I think he's got a perfect opportunity, and he showed that the offense can go out and put up points against
Yeah.
Oregon. I think he's got a perfect opportunity, like you said, to get to that Final Four and really shut up his critics. And I always root for that. I'm not a big James Franklin fan, but I am a fan of coaches going out and doing what people say they can't do. I think that's something that really is awesome to see, just to get that monkey off of their back. I think about what Coach Prime did this year. I think about what Kurt Signetti, what he's doing right now. You know what I mean? I think it's really cool to see those coaches get that monkey off their back. And so if he's able to make a run, I think he could really shut up a lot of his critics, much like Ryan Day could at Ohio State as well. So that would be good, man. They like you said, Oregon was supposed to have the easier draw, but Penn State lost, and they got a much easier way about it, man. So this is it's definitely interesting. I wonder what was the motivation behind doing this, because if I'm Oregon, I'm upset.
Oh, yeah. But if there's anybody that can get a team motivated in that situation, it's Dan Lanning.
Oh yeah.
But, so that kind of leads us to the Ohio State path. We look at it, obviously, Tennessee, phenomenal defensive line.
Oh yeah.
And they run the ball a lot. So honestly, the cold weather thing, unless we get like a foot of snow, is almost a detriment to Ohio State.
Yeah.
Now, granted, if it's a clear day and it's cold, nothing matters.
Yeah.
It's harder to throw the ball a little bit, yes. But Tennessee wants to run the ball. They want to be physical. So the cold weather is not going to slow them down. I mean,
Yeah.
if anything, you get some weather and it puts Ohio State behind the 8 ball, because then, you said that you got the 2 Ferraris in the backfield.
Yeah.
Well, you got 3 McLarens on the outside.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see, and obviously monitor the weather as it gets closer. But Coach Day talked today. Obviously the concern coming out of the Michigan game was the O-line.
Yeah.
And he made no bones about it, that it's up for grabs. He mentioned that Josh Padilla and some kid from Finley are both up for starting jobs. So you and I were talking about that, when that came out. So what do you envision if if changes are made, what do you envision the line would look like?
Yeah, and this is tough because a lot of Buckeye fans will go back to last year against Missouri when we had those changes on the offensive line, and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, look how Enoch looked against Missouri, right? And how terrible things were up front." And I know a lot of Buckeye fans will be nervous about that. But I think what you will see if we see a couple tweaks on the offensive line with a Josh Padilla and with a Luke Montgomery, you're going to see a lot more athleticism. And with a lot more athleticism against a very athletic defensive line, you're able to do some more gap scheme things, and running some inside zone concepts is a little easier when you have more athletic guys. I think you're going to see a lot of changes to the run game. I think you're going to see a lot more pin and pull, especially if you have a Padilla and you have a Luke Montgomery in there, because that's going to play to their strength, especially Luke. I know I'm a homer. You know, I had the opportunity to coach him, but Luke he's not your normal 310-pound offensive lineman. Like he's an athlete, and so you want to be able to get him out there moving. And so I think you're going to see some tweaks, and I think that's why Coach Day is willing to do that, because he knows it's what they have to do. I'm not I'm not going to sit here and bash Tegra. I just know Tegra's not playing his best football right now. Just like at the end of the spring, our guy Luke wasn't playing his best football, and Tegra sees the starting spot, right? And so I think when you're going into this game, I guarantee you, Coach Day has got you know, if I'm going to get fired, I'm going to get fired. So what do I have to lose? I'm going to go out swinging and putting the guys that I think should be out there athletically, and we're just going to go out there with them and let our dudes go make plays. And so I'm excited for the change if it does happen. I personally would like to see Carson Hinsman go back to guard, because I think he was playing really well at guard. I think
Yes.
since that Penn State game, he was having doing a really good job. And so I would like to see him go back to guard and maybe bring a Josh Padilla in at center and possibly Luke at right guard, or if you want to keep Tegra. But I would go ahead and make that change. I really would. These are the future. These are the future. These are the guys you're going to be counting on for next year. And so this isn't a throwaway game by any means. You're not throwing us away. You're doing what you feel is best. These guys give us the best chance to win. We need to match athlete for athlete, and we're going to go out there and we're going to go out and swing. You know, I guarantee you, if Luke and Josh, having met them and or been around Josh a few times with Luke, they are going to do whatever it takes to sell out to help the team. I mean, absolutely everything. There's not anybody's bigger or harder on themselves than those two. And so I'm excited, man. If that happens, you know, there will be a couple growing pains for a couple series maybe, but I think it could really blossom into something good and will be great for our future on the offensive line.
Yeah, I agree. You know, because you have to know what you need out of the portal. I mean, right now, I would say you need 2 tackles and an interior guy, if not 2. I mean, you know, depending on what you really feel like you have. Um, you know, one of those guys is Josh Thompson from Northwestern. Everybody and their brother is going to talk to this kid out of the portal, but he is scheduling an Ohio State visit.
Yeah.
So just throwing that out there as a little portal recruiting chip.
Yeah.
And I know that you said that you know, you've heard upwards of like 6 guys they've talked to.
Yeah.
The portal's nuts, dude. Like there's no other way to put it.
It's crazy, man.
But I kind of like it.
Yeah.
I'm all for these guys being able to find opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yes, if you're just taking a bag, and there's going to be that, but I want to dive in, and we'll have to do this as probably its own episode. I really want to deep dive into the number of guys who, you know, even just using the Ryan Day era, have decommitted and or transferred that have blossomed elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because outside of Jamison Williams and Joe Burrow, we'll throw Joe Burrow out there.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a lot. And what made me think of this was seeing that Amari Abert has already said he's entering the portal again.
Again.
Brown,
Wow.
Blair Brown, Caleb
Yeah.
Burke. You know, there's 3 guys right now that are going on to their 3rd school.
Yeah.
The receiver that went to Iowa.
Caleb Brown. Yeah.
Yes. So another guy who left Ohio State for greener pastures, which if I'm a wide receiver, why I would go to Iowa, I don't know.
Yeah.
But then you look at like Tulane's quarterback is going into the portal. That's
Yeah.
a guy who is going for opportunity. That is a
Absolutely.
guy who is going to not only go get a bag, but get a Power 4 chance at somewhere legit.
Yeah. And then the transfer portal, I think, we've talked about it so many times. I'm always going to advocate for the players being able to go out and get the best opportunity for them and their family. I don't think the NCAA should stop that. I think if you feel after a year that's not your right place and you want to transfer, you should be able to transfer. But I do think the only people that this really hurts are those, group of five, those lower level teams, because now you've basically become an extension of high school. You've basically become junior college, right? You know, excuse me. You could see so and so from James Madison at quarterback playing really well. And then you see him in a conference championship game, and you're just at Ohio State and you're just watching, like, oh man, this kid's really good. Like, man, we might need a quarterback, hey, let's jot his name down so we can reach out
Exactly.
to him if he does enter the portal, right? Those are things that, it's free agency. I mean, that's just exactly what it is. And I think there's good with that. I think that's why you don't see a dominant team in college football, is because there's so much parity. There's so many athletes that are going to every single school, right? And so it makes it more competitive. And you can't complain about it being more competitive. And I love that. I love that there's not four undefeated teams in the top four that have just dominated. They're all the way to the playoff. And so, listen, it sucks when we lose some guys, but if we can get another Caleb Downs, I
Seth
won't be mad.
McLaughlin. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah. Um, Speaking of Caleb Downs and Seth, I think I've seen like 4 Bama guys already today
yeah,
declare that they're going to the border. 2 receivers, tackle. No Keon yet, but I'm
no,
telling you, it's coming. And obviously, we'll do our bracket picks, when we do our before the battle. One other little recruiting, and this isn't even a chip. This is like the bottom of the Ruffles bag crumb. But yet Ohio State fans are making it out like it's the best chips and queso you've ever had in your life. And that is Chase Herbstreit commits to Michigan today. And everybody's freaking out about, oh my God, how does this happen? The kid didn't have an offer anywhere.
no.
He didn't take a visit anywhere. It is not a scholarship offer. He is walking on, I would assume.
Yes, yeah, and sorry, there are such things as the collective scholarships where you have collectives that are going to pay for them. Listen, the Herbstreit family is not hurting for money. He's not going to pay for school anyway.
Right.
I think Chase Herbstreit is a very good quarterback from the state of Ohio. I think he did some really good things at St. Xavier. I think he's a really good player. Just because your dad went to Ohio State does not mean that you have to. Like, these kids are allowed to create their own lane and follow their own path. Maybe he grew up and he was so entrenched in all these things Buckeye that there is some resentment. We don't know, right? So why make that such a big deal? We weren't recruiting him, right? If anything, if he came to Ohio State like his brother did, he was going to be a walk-on, right?
Yep.
And so that is okay. Go to Michigan, go to the team up north, go do your thing, have a great career. You're going to be a backup quarterback pretty much the entire time, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that,
And you're
right?
getting a top-notch education.
You're getting a phenomenal education at a beautiful school. Like, listen, he's a kid. Let him go do that. Why are we making a big deal out of that? It frustrates me, man. Like, I don't understand. Just because he's, Kirk Herbstreit's son does not mean he has to go to Ohio State. These kids are their own human beings. They can go do the things that they feel they want to do. And Kirk is going to go support his kid no matter where he goes to school. Right. That's what dads do. That's what parents do. So, shout out to him for taking advantage of an opportunity that was given to him.
Yeah. So to hit reverse real quick to the offensive line comment or the discussion. I still don't know why this happened on Friday. I don't think it's what we all want it to be, but LaCharles Bentley was at the Woody on Friday. I don't think a lot of y'all that are listening realize that if this is what we wanted it to be, this is like a 5-run grand slam.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
with that said, I don't think it was an interview of any sort.
No.
Do I think he is doing some consulting? Absolutely. And I think that goes along with what you said about we're going to see an entirely different run scheme
Yeah.
come the Tennessee game. You know, depending on how hands-on LaCharles is. Because those of you that don't know, you know, obviously you might know the name LaCharles Bentley, former Buckeye center, played under Tressel, is probably the number one offensive line consultant, draft prep guy, anything basically privatized in the offensive line world.
Yeah.
LaCharles Bentley is the guy. So that will be interesting to monitor as to what his involvement is right now.
Yeah. Yeah, man. We've said it on here so many times. The idea of having more Buckeyes coming back is awesome. In any form or fashion, it's important that you open those doors to the alum to come back and do some things. I know there are a lot of people clamoring for him to be the offensive line coach, which in a perfect world it would be great. He might be making more money on the private side than he would be as an offensive line coach at Ohio State. And so, like, I get it. I get the excitement. But if he's just coming back to be that consultant, maybe come be on the sidelines for the playoffs or different things like that, hey, I'm all for it, man. Listen, get these former Buckeyes back here. You see how it's paying off with Tim Walton, with Brian Hartline, with James Laurinaitis, right? You're seeing it with these guys. So let's continue to get those guys back around our kids so they know the importance of being a Buckeye, right? And so I think it's great, man. LaCharles Bentley, I wish injuries wouldn't have ended his NFL career because I think he could have been really, really good. He was already really good. But I think it's really cool that he's coming back around.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing that makes me wonder if there's more to it is because he played the game of putting that picture up, knowing the craziness that would stir up.
Yeah.
So we'll see. You know, we've always said, you know, I don't wish for anybody to lose their job, but Justin Fry's contract is up, so it's not like he's getting canned. We'll see what happens. You know, if Ohio State goes on the run of a lifetime, which is very, very, very possible, and wins a natty, do the critics of Justin Fry calm down? Probably not, because we're Ohio State fans. But something we didn't get to last week that, you know, we've talked about a lot is, you know, we just want to jump and talk a little bit about the whole Ryan Day future conversation.
Yeah.
We've both have made no bones about it that we don't think getting rid of Ryan Day is the move. I know you have relaxed a little bit on that front. I guess that's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah. I've relaxed in this sense of, I think every coach, every program gets to a certain point where a philosophy change or a culture change may be needed, right? I experienced that when I was a head coach. You know, there were certain people that felt there was a culture change needed. I felt that as well, right? I've been on staffs where that's happened as well. It's just inevitable, right? You get to a certain point where, yes, you are finding success, but there's just certain things that are stopping you from getting over the hump. And so when I say I've relaxed on that, it's if Ross Bjork decided to move on from Coach Day, I could understand why. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I could get why you would think it's time to move on. Let's get some new life in here. Let's change some things. I would totally get that, and I would support it. I'm not calling for Coach Day to lose his job by any means. Everybody knows how I feel about Coach Day. He's a phenomenal dude. I want him to be our head coach. I'll be completely transparent about that. But I would understand in a world where an AD or the admin or the booster said, hey, you know what, Coach Day, like you've been great for these last however many years, you know, even as an offensive coordinator, I think we're going to move in a different direction. I would understand why. But this is why I don't think it's going to happen. It's because I truly believe that Coach Day has done everything that we've asked him to do as far as changes that need to be made, right? He's brought back more Buckeyes. He hired James Laurinaitis, right? He went out and got a good offensive coordinator in Bill O'Brien, and then Bill O'Brien leaves, and who's he go get? He goes and gets Chip Kelly, right? And then he becomes the CEO. He does all of these things. He gets more aggressive with NIL. He gets more aggressive in the portal. All these things that we clamored for him to do, he has done, right? So what would make me believe that that's still not going to be the case? The bottom line is he does have a Michigan problem. And if he stays our head coach and he does lose, you know, the 2 out of the next 3, there's a good chance he gets the same Coach Cooper treatment and he is put out of the building, right? That's a very real possibility. But the idea that he's not going to make these changes or that this program is just sucked underneath him is just mind blowing to me, right? So I jotted down because I do not want Coach Day to go. I think he's a great coach. But again, I would understand if there was a reason or if there was admin or boosters that were pushing for that to happen. I think Coach Day is great. But this is some of the things that I think he would need to do to really help himself out in the future. Number one, I do think you're going to see some changes on the offensive side of the ball when it comes to the coaching staff. Okay. Does that mean that he's going to fire people? No. I just think Coach Fry and Coach Kelly have the desire to be head coaches, and there's some good mid-level programs out there right now. The Marshall job just came open, right? There are some things out there right now that I think Coach Fry would be extremely interested in, right? I think Coach Kelly is extremely interested in that North Carolina job. I really do. And so it's not because I've heard anything. I feel like he's put feelers out there for those type of jobs. And so with that, what does Coach Day need to do if that happens, right? Or if he decides to move on from those two? He needs to hire somebody that is a complete scheme change from what he has done for his entire career, especially when it comes to the run game, right? He needs to hire somebody that's going to challenge him. Okay. Who did that the best? Nick Saban. Nick Saban has a way that he wants things done, but every single year he was turning over people that were going to challenge him. Lane Kiffin was not a Nick Saban type of guy, right? Coach Sark was not a Nick Saban type of guy, right? Kirby Smart was, okay? But you're talking about bringing in people that are going to challenge you, and then they're going to move on to be great head coaches of some big-time programs. I want to see Ryan Day go do that. I want to see him go identify some of those young coaches across the country that are really going to come in here and get innovative with the offense, right? And I think that's what Coach Day needs to do. And so I do think you're going to see some of those things. I do think you're going to see a little bit of a culture change when it comes to not just the scheme, but the program in general. Sorry. Who was the guy that shared that tweet with you about Coach Tressel? Coach Tressel did not harp on the hate of the team up north.
Yes.
That was not something that he did, right? He said it when he came back this year to talk to the program. Coach Tress wanted you to love being a Buckeye so much that it would truly break your heart if you felt like you let your brother down. If you have that love for being a Buckeye, you are going to go out there and you're not going to lose to Michigan, because that is going to hurt being a Buckeye. It's going to hurt the brotherhood. And so being able to create more of that love for being a Buckeye rather than the hate for that team up north, I think there needs to be a philosophical change when it comes to the way that we view them, right? It can't be about them. It's got to solely be about us from here on out, right? We tried to play the tough card this year. How'd that work? Right? You said you're going to hang up 100 on him. How'd that work out? It didn't work out. And so we need to really take a look at how we are approaching that game and completely flip it, right? I think I think he can do that. Coach Harbaugh, I know people say he cheated, all those different things, but he viewed the Ohio State Michigan game as just another game, right? He did for those first 5 years that he was there. That's what he viewed it as. And then once he started getting more competitive, he changed his tone. And now you're seeing Sharon Moore really dive into that with the flag planning and all that
Yeah.
stuff, the basketball game. And so I think you're going to see a philosophical change when it comes to the program as far as how you deal with Michigan and the scheme as well. The big thing is Coach Day needs to continue to step out of his comfort zone. I think Coach Day is a phenomenal coach. I think he is a player's first coach. I think there are some things that, he can do better. Every head coach can do things better. But I think if he's able to make a couple of these tweaks and changes, I think he could set himself up for success against a team up north and continue to be a playoff team and get back to the Big Ten championship in years to come. And so that's where my mind is when it comes to Coach Day. I would understand if they decided to move on because that's a decision that the admin and the boosters would have to make. And if they feel that way, hey, Coach Day, I love you. You did a great job here. If you feel you got to move on, okay, go move on. But I also understand if we decide to stick with him, they're going to tell him like, hey, some changes need to be made. And he's going to have some tough conversations. As a head coach, it's not a fun place to be, but it makes you better in the end. I'm a way better coach now because of the things I went through as the head coach of Harding, right? Being at that crossroads and not knowing, which way to go. I'm a way better coach, way better teacher than I ever was. And if the good Lord presents me with an opportunity to be a head coach again, like I know I will be much more successful because of the things that I went through. And so I think Coach Day is at that point. And so I think if he can make some of these changes, I think you're going to see him really has potential to really take off because recruiting is going to stay the same. We're going to be a top 5 team every single year. None of that's going to say we're going to get some dog quarterbacks, but what are we doing to challenge ourselves as coaches? And so got to take a look in the mirror, make those changes. And I think he could set himself up well for the rest of his career at Ohio State.
Yeah. So the tweet that you referenced was from LaCharles Bentley.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I couldn't remember.
So let me get it pulled up again here. I played under 2 head coaches at OSU, Cooper and Tress. The difference under Tress, he made the game a priority. I didn't hate Michigan. Tress made us love OSU more than we could ever hate Michigan. The game isn't about hatred of Michigan, but playing for the honor to call yourself a Buckeye. This, in my opinion, was the brilliance of Tress. He made me love and honor what it means to wear the uniform. It's not about fighting after a game. That's not it. You love OSU enough to not embarrass the legacy of those that came before you. You play way different when that is in your heart. I mean, that sums it up. I mean,
yeah. And listen, like when you've lost a game so many times and you do have a hatred, you got to deal with our fan base, right? People probably looking for your address, try to show up to your house. Your kids are going to school and they got to deal with it every single day, right? I guarantee RJ's life is not easy when he walks through those doors of the sales, right? So there's a lot of things that you have to deal with. You will develop a hatred for that team because that team is ruining your life, right? They're making your life very difficult. But how can you approach it in a way that makes your guys love being a Buckeye more than you could ever hate Michigan, right? And I think that is something that will change things drastically when it comes to this program and that game. So I think Coach Day's got some. I think he's got some things he could do the rest of this year. Obviously, go win a natty, shuts everybody up, right? You go win a natty, it shuts everybody up. But going into the offseason, after we win a natty, I think there's some tweaks that he can make that could really propel this program even farther forward than it already is.
That North Carolina job is going to be real interesting because if it's true that Belichick is legitimately interested, I don't know that you can say no.
Oh, God, no.
I mean, Bill Belichick walking into your living room to recruit little Johnny to come play quarterback for him. Like, that's wild.
Yeah.
I'm with you that I understand if they want to move on. But I will say the same thing that I've always said. You cannot mess it up and get it wrong.
Yeah.
You basically have to have a handshake deal with whoever it is that you want before you move on.
Yeah.
You know, obviously the two names everybody's going to say are Mike Vrabel and Marcus Freeman.
Yep.
Okay, cool, I guess. I mean, Vrabel, yeah, but Vrabel's going to be the number one selection of almost every NFL team that has an opening this year.
Yeah.
If I'm going to deal with dudes making millions of dollars and have egos, am I really going to want to do it when they're 18 to 22, or am I going to want to do it when they realize what goes into being a professional?
Yeah.
Freeman, I would be interested to see if he would take it.
Yeah.
I think he loves Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And he's got it really, really good where he's at. A dude who I brought up and was quickly told he's might not be 100% bought into coaching is Eddie. I think Eddie would be interesting.
Yeah.
But if he's not 100% bought in, obviously Ohio State's not the place to be. If he's still got business ventures and that type of stuff. Matt Campbell, I know that's your boy.
That's my guy.
I don't love it though.
Yeah, I get it.
Two kind of dark horses though. Both, one with ties to the program, the other was with the ties to the state of Ohio. Jeff Hafley intrigues me.
Yeah.
That Jeff Hafley defense was insane. Now, granted, it was littered with NFL guys. Let's call a spade a spade. And I don't think you would get him, especially because his team has shown a resurgence. But Nick Sirianni,
yeah,
and then a guy you and I have talked about, in depth in our private conversations. I think if you go this route, you better have the right staff. Is Hartline.
Yeah.
Obviously, if something happens that they decide to move on from Day, we will dive deeper into that list. But
Yeah.
one last thing, as far as the staffing side of life goes, we always refer to Mark Pantoni as the GM. But I feel like it's more of a player personnel guy. And you saw Stanford bring Andrew Luck in and label him a GM. Do you think, now you've got Ryan Day as your CEO, do you think it's time we bring in like a GM of some sort, be it, I don't know, let's throw something against the wall, a guy like Chris Spielman.
Yeah.
To run point for NIL, to run point between Pantoni and the NIL, to just further help structure the team like a business.
Yeah, listen, I think there's a lot of things that you gotta take a look at. If the Buckeyes go out and we lose this first round game, right, and we finish the year 10-3, didn't accomplish any of the goals that we had set forth, right? I think we move on from Day? No, but I like we said, I could understand if we decided to, if the admin decided to, but I personally wouldn't. And if you don't, then as the head coach, you've got to take a look at everything, right? I get it. Your boys, Pantoni is your boy. Marriott or Mick Marotti that's your guy, right? He's been running the strength program. Unfortunately, you got to look at everything, right? You've got to go back to the drawing board and look at everything and try things or look at things and see if there's things that we could do that would actually work. And so I could see them going in that direction, maybe looking at like a Cardale and bringing him in as one of those guys, right? Or like you said, bringing a big name back and being a GM of some sort. And so all the things have to be on the table if we don't go out and take care of business in the playoff. And I think, Ross Bjork and Ted Carter and the boosters will have that conversation with Coach Day that, they're going to have to take a hard look at the entire program and make the tough changes. But like that list of guys, I think they're all great coaches. I'm just at that place where it's, that seeing Jim Tressel back around a lot more it's made me appreciate the way that he did things. And that's why I was so frustrated when people were talking about, oh, we need Urban, we need Urban. It's just like, I'm not the biggest fan of Urban. I think he's a great coach. I think he did some great things. Obviously won a natty here. But when it comes to just loving being a Buckeye, I want to see guys really, embody that. I think that's one of the things that makes Braxton Miller. So I got his jersey hanging up here, man. That dude loved being a Buckeye, right? And so, like, I just think about the way that Coach Tress went about things, before he went away. I think if you can find a coach that can mimic some of those things and is able to, get that passion back into, as far as just loving being a Buckeye, I think you can see the program get right back to where we all want it to be. It's tough because we're really good. Like,
right.
This team is fully capable of winning a national title, right? And we wouldn't have this conversation if we made 2 field goals, right? Like that's the harsh truth about this job. And so it's just mind blowing. We have to have these conversations, but I hope, and I said it earlier, I hope Coach Day goes out and shuts everybody up. I really
Absolutely.
do. I hope he gets aggressive and goes out, shuts everybody up, and he can smirk on the inside, right? And go win a natty, go into the offseason, and make the tweaks that you feel like you need to make and come back stronger than ever. And so that's what I'm hoping for, man, because I believe in Coach Day. I believe in the type of man that he is. And, I like seeing him in charge of our program. But on the flip side, I get it if they ever decide to move on.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, I mean that kind of ties up the Buckeye part of the week. Obviously with no battle to get ready for this week, we'll have to see if we can't throw something together at some point for a midweek.
Oh yeah,
got a few irons in the fire.
yeah.
Started having conversations with another former Buckeye about doing an appearance. So we'll see, and that's another Trestle era guy. So that would be interesting to hear. One last thing before we get out of here, though. We've talked high school football on and off throughout this whole season. We had seven games this week, all 7 state finals, and honestly, outside of one, let's call it outside of 2, we had bangers.
Yeah,
I mean, the 7 divisions. Like I'm a big critic of the OHSAA. And the cartel and cash grab that they are. They might be onto something with the 7 divisions things, though. Obviously, you have way more dealings in that side of life. So I will not put you on the spot there.
I appreciate that.
Thursday night, we started with the D2 game, Avon, Cincinnati Anderson, and a snow globe.
Yeah.
Avon pulls that one out. And then Friday morning, this has been the one that has put the OHSAA under a mad amount of scrutiny this weekend. Maria Stein, Marion Local. For those of you that don't know, no, that's not Marion, Ohio. Little district, almost to the Indiana border, essentially. 111 boys, as far as for the numbers to division-wise. 61% of them play football.
Yeah.
I would venture to guess they dress more kids than Marion Harding.
Yeah.
I don't know what Harding dressed this year. They win 74-0. So everybody is calling for, oh my God, they need to be D1. Well, no, they don't, because if they go to D1, they would get waxed. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
The OHSA has competitive balance now. And they're like, well, they should move up a division. The way competitive balance is written, they can't just move up a division.
Yeah.
They would have to move to D1. They can't cherry pick their division just because they want to move up. But to their defense, the other kind of a blowout game was the D6 game that was 31-7. The Coldwater Heaters, or the Cavaliers, if you really want to get technical, win. Another powerhouse. Marion Local beat them this year by a lot. So it doesn't matter if you put them in D6. They were probably going to win.
Yeah.
Their senior class didn't lose a game in high school.
It's insane.
In 4 years.
It's insane.
More than half of their games were shutouts. They don't start playing tackle football over there. And Coldwater's the same way until 7th grade.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think they got it right.
Oh, no doubt.
I can speak from experience that by the time my son hit 7th grade, he was burnt out.
Yeah.
Little known fact, the guy on the other side of the screen knocked on my, or not knocked on my door, but hit my phone up every year that he coached at Harding.
Yeah.
Hey, when's he coming back?
Yeah.
He just had no desire.
Yeah.
Obviously we got to give props. And the D1 game, fellow Olentangy School District, Liberty.
Yeah, man.
I just shocks the world.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Listen, we played them, we had some things not go our way and we lost that game, but Liberty is a great program. Coach Hale is one of the GOATs in Ohio, man. He's always done things the right way. And, he really did a great job. That program's only had 2 coaches in their existence.
Wow.
And so they had Coach Hale for 20 years, from 2002 or 3 until, last season. Then Coach Sansbury came in and he's done a great job and just continued that. They had some studs, man. They had over 30 seniors. They were returning everybody from last year's team pretty much who, was at Finley. They upset us, which, I would venture to say it wasn't an upset. But they, beat us on the Philly special on a 2-point conversion. This still doesn't sit well with me to this day. But it's a great program, well coached, super disciplined. And anytime a public school can take down one of the parochial schools, like I enjoy that. I know our guy, Gene Rucker coaches at Central Catholic. Shout out to Gene for another great season up there. But I do like the fact that there are some public schools out there that can go out there and take care of business. Liberty is a very affluent community. And so there's a lot of resources that they have. And so, it could be comparable to a parochial school, but I was just happy to see those guys take care of business. The Olentangy School District itself, the worst record, the worst 2 records. Well, the worst record in the league was 8-3, right? In the 4 schools. Okay, wow. So we all made it to the playoffs. We all had the ability to make a run, and I was glad to see Liberty did it. And I hope my Braves that are listening, I hope that this motivates us and all the other schools in the district so they can see like, dude, this is possible for us, man. We just got to go out and take care of business. And so shout out to Olentangy Liberty, man. They took care of business. I was rooting for them. I was glad to see them win.
My second favorite collegiate bowler is an Olentangy Liberty graduate, Mr. Carter Street.
Okay.
His dad, Craig, is a loyal listener. Some of my favorite people in the world. Big baseball family too.
Yeah.
And then it ended last night with a heartbreaker. I have talked about my niece, the top ranked number 7U T-ball coach pitcher in America, Ren Whaley.
Yeah.
She'll be a Perkins Pirate. They were up 7 going into the 4th. Indian Valley scores, goes for 2 and gets it. They lose by 1.
Wow.
But real quick caveat about Perkins. They have a tackle who has camped at Ohio State. His name is Eli Sanchez.
Yeah.
Class of 26, 6'4", 295. You just lost the state title game by a point. And this young man was on the sidelines helping the Water Boys clear the benches. That's special, man.
Yeah.
I will actually try to share that TikTok on our page. I think that's amazing. So I want to give him a shout out. He'll never hear this, obviously. But shout out to him. But that kind of wraps us up for your opening drive, brought to you guys by the Barn and Cornerstone. You got anything else?
No, man, that's it. That's we're getting close to exam week at school, so the behaviors might see an uptick these next 2 weeks, man. But that's all I got.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys for something midweek, even if it's just some kind of quick hitter. But yeah, we appreciate you guys as always, and we will see you then.